we're working with them. So
No,
that's archived.
and in case you're wondering, I'm actually very happy to contribute to this.
We're delighted to have you.
The reason being, okay, Liz, the reason being
See you, darling. Thank you.
the fact that I grew up in the valley, one of the few that didn't immigrate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's very important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I might be in the edge of the valley, but I can say I'm still living in the valley.
Yeah, but you grew up bang in the middle of the
Oh
valley.
yeah. I spent my first 29 years there, like.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to start off with the date. It's the 21st of July 2025. We are in the Mealagh Valley. We are with Martin O'Mahony, who grew up in the valley. I am Eleanor Fitzgerald, and we also have Kait Husmann here as our videographer. This interview is being recorded for the Mealagh Valley Oral History Project, Voices of the Valley, and it will be saved as part of the Cork Folklore Project. So,
right, I go back to the start. Okay, I was born in the Mealagh Valley. Not everybody can say that. My mother told me, I think I was born on her way up the stairs in Ards, right? Now there's going to be for funny bits in this, so you'll have to some aid.
Tell us what year you were born, you don't have to.
The 26th of April 1957.
Great.
The reason why I was born at home was the hospital, as we know now, was known then as the new hospital, was being built in the 50s. So the cottage hospital was mainly closed, and quite a number of births were home births, not by choice, but because the hospital wasn't available. Okay, so then you'd have like the nurse would come around, and basically anyway. So not like I says, not alone am I from Mealagh Valley, but I was born in the Mealagh Valley, and as I said, I'm the youngest of four. To start off my journey, our parents reared 4 of us on 20 acres. Now, that was survival. We were never hungry, but I always say we were reared in a cashless society. Very well self-sufficient. And in those days, one thing is very important for me to point out, that the women worked probably harder than the men. Okay? When I say worked harder, because they worked, my mother would have worked on the farm, reared the family, did the housework, the lot. So to rear 4 kids on 20 acres, people can't do it now on 100 acres, right? My parents would have milked 7 cows, we would have had pigs, banhbs, and one of the more interesting things that I have to add to this is having the sow, having the banhbs in the kitchen. This is something now that people think is third world, okay? But I was having a chat with a guy in a pub one night, and we were having, like I say, never deny where you come from, because if you do, life is over. So that's all right, he said, but I remember having 2 sows in the kitchen. And this was before the advent of a thing called the farrowing pin. And the danger was that the sow, which was the mother, would lie on the babies. And losing an animal was crucial. So it was quite normal to bring the sow into the kitchen. And when I say the kitchen, that's where we ate. We'd be sleeping upstairs and the sow and banhbs would be downstairs. And that was no big deal. That was life, as I said earlier. In places like the Mealagh Valley, you could say really from the 30s until the EU money started coming in, that life didn't really change in hidden valleys like the Mealagh Valley. So like growing up in the Mealagh Valley and going to school, so we would have walked to a place that I would call the bottom of Kealkill, which is the hill climbing up from Ards, and Peggy O'Sullivan, as she was known as Peggy John Owen, because her father was John, her grandfather was Owen, would pick us up, and she would take us to Coomleigh School, which was later closed in 1968. And Peggy always encouraged us to walk barefoot in the summer. Mind you, we wouldn't have much shoes anyway. And one thing I remember is that if the road was tarred in the summer, and the chips they were using that time were much bigger, busting your toes walking in the new rough chips. The toilets in the school were dry toilets. Some people called them the long drop. So my neighbour, Bill Driscoll, would come along once a year with a horse and cart. And the contents of the toilet, because it was a dry toilet, would be piped and shoveled into the horse and cart and used as manure. That's a bit alien to people now as well.
There was value to it.
But there was. Yes. Now, the other thing that I say is about my parents would have lived on a very low carbon footprint. And when I say a very low carbon footprint, Eleanor, you mentioned about shops in the valley. One of my earlier members would be Jackie Willy. Now, Jackie Willy had a shop where the tile shop is now in Glengarriff Road. It's actually, the tile shop is the actual building. That was Willy's shop. And his sister had the shop up in the corner that we bought later. Nora Willy, she married a man from Glengarriff by the name of Paddy Hurley. But anyway, that's my earliest memory. My parents told me there was a shop over in Drumsullivan by a man, we always knew him as Busty Carney. I think it was Willie Carney was his name. And you see, a shop in those days would be like tea, sugar, tobacco. Tobacco, very important. There wouldn't be maybe paraffin oil and a few basic things like that, like because people wants were very low. So in part of what I jotted down in memories of the Mealagh Valley is one I distinctly remember from being very young. As I did say, my parents were self-sufficient, killing the pig. Now, this was a horrendous ordeal.
It was a big job.
Horrendous. Because the pig wasn't sedated in any fashion. The pig was basically bled to death. So 4 or 5 men would get together, hold the pig down, but there'd be one specific person that would be allotted to stick in the pig, because if the pig was stuck wrong, the pig wouldn't bleed properly. So basically you bled the poor animal to death. And you could hear that pig roaring 2 or 3 parishes away. Wouldn't you too if you were trying to fight for your life? So it was a huge ordeal. That was a big event in the calendar, because the woman of the house would spend the day boiling water. Remember now, there was no electricity in these days. So water would be continuously boiled all day, and you'd fill up a big barrel of water. And once the pig was dead, the pig would be lowered into the barrel to heat up the skin. And then you shaved the pig with the cut-throat razor. That's reality, like. Later then people went on to using the blow lamp to take off the hair off the skin. Basically the payment then for the people helping for the day is they'd have a piece of pig going home. They had no choice. Yeah. That's where the word, the meitheal, came in. Also, you had big numbers of people in every house. So gathering numbers to get work done was no problem. You know? So if you want to talk about big events, the thrashing would have been a very big event. And you have to explain to people now what does thrashing mean. Thrashing the corn, because one of the things I remember my father saying when the original mowing machine came in first, that was the one pulled by a horse, or in the bigger farms you had a bigger one pulled by 2 horses, and the guys that would have been cutting the hay with the side were complaining that their livelihood was going to be wiped out with the mowing machine. Just think about it. But that was job security. Yeah. But like, the joke I suppose I often make in life, the start of unemployment was the wheelbarrow. Because then one person, no, but one person could do the job that 2 people are doing. So that was the start, to me, that was the start of unemployment. So like, as I said, big events in the calendar, I remember seeing my first reaper and binder. Now, the reaper and binder was a step up from the mowing machine. It reaped the corn and bound it, so it was known as a reaper and binder. Now you have a machine that does the whole lot. It cuts it, it threshes it, spits the whole thing out the back and holds the grain in maybe 5 or 10 ton, whatever they need. But these would have been huge events. Cutting the turf would have been a big event. One other thing springs to mind. I remember my father telling me we had 7 breweries. I shouldn't call them breweries. 7 distilleries in the Mealagh Valley at one stage. And there's no need for me to explain what they were making. But you see, in those days, a bottle of moonshine, I think, would have been like 2 shillings or a half a crown. And because there was no money in circulation, the people that made moonshine, it was like a side income. For us as teenagers, it would be in the rabbits. And my late brother Frank, he would have been absolutely a dinger, and all the traps and snares had to be checked every morning before he went to school. That was more important than going to school. And the odd time you'd catch the odd badger, which you didn't really appreciate. And then another farmer's shop that was in the area, which probably few people would talk about now. There was a man worked for, I think it was John Lane in Dunmanway. And his name was Dennis or Dinny Regan. And he would do a run around the valley once a week. I think it was Wednesday. And he would deliver coal. And he would have basic groceries like bread and sugar, salt, tobacco. Sure, people didn't buy much more. And so he used to buy the rabbits as well from us. So the rabbits would be gutted, which my brother Frank was a topper at. And he could have 30 or 50 rabbits for this guy, Dinny Regan. Now, when I touch on the hygiene side of it, it was a bit limited because, one, you must remember that to us, the bread at him was known as shop bread, because almost most people, including my neighbours, there were 3 bachelors, bread was made at home, you know. And I often think about it like, this is the guy now delivering the coal, and there were no gloves in these days. So he was delivering bags of coal and handling loaves of bread. So you can just think of the hygiene side of it, you know.
And then handling the raw rabbits as well.
No cross-contamination or anything. No.
Strong microbiomes.
Exactly.
Definitely.
So then roll on, myxomatosis came along, and that put a big dent in our pocket money, because it said that if we got the guy that invented the myxomatosis, we'd kill him. Because I have to insist that there was no money exchanging hands. Like, my parents achieved something, I think, like, and the older I get, the more I realise it. They reared 4 of us on 20 acres, okay?
It's phenomenal.
There was no subsidies, and my father never worked outside the house, as in he never worked for anybody else, right? So, like, if they weren't as thrifty as they were, we'd go hungry.
Yeah.
But we never went hungry. Now, as I tell one story, I think of another.
Good.
I remember the big snow in '63. It started the 6th of January. And I would have gone to town with my mother on the 6th of January. Remember now, it was '63, so I was 6 years old. Coming 6. Born in '57. April '57. But anyway, and it started to snow that day. And but we didn't cycle home. Now, bear in mind, when I say I went to town with my mother, I would have gone on the carrier of the bike. I didn't have a bike. We had one bike. And I remember getting a spin home, and it was snowing. And the following morning, I remember getting up, and the snow was the height of myself, opening the front door in Ards. And that snow lasted for quite a while. '63 was a very cold, miserable year. but that snow lasted. It closed up schools and all that kind of thing, you know. I suppose the other joke I make is that in my childhood we had a car, but it was pulled by a horse. People find it difficult to get their head around that at this stage. My father bought his first car, a Morris Minor, in 1974. But my father was one of these people, he believed if you didn't have the price of something, you didn't buy it. And I suppose when I reflect and people think of hardship today, and I know we all perceive things our own way, and sometimes we think we have it tough. Another thing that I reflect on is there was a Stanley Number 8 in the house at home. It was put in before I was born because the chimney was a bad drafter. But what I think of what work my mother did with the Stanley 8, okay? So it heated the house. It heated all the hot water that was used in the house. And don't mention a back boiler. The boiler was to the slightly cooler side of the stove. There would have been a large pot that was always heated. The water was constantly heating on the surplus heat from the main part of the range, right? So it heated the house. It heated the water. It made all the meals. Okay? It baked the bread and aired the clothes. Just think about it.
It was the centre of the house.
It was the centre of the house. And no coal was burning at that time. It would be turf, which at the time would have been from Dinny Regan's bog. Dinny Regan's later became Ger Hurley, or we used to call him Ger Pad. But, and yes, I would distinctly remember spending time in the bog. I said the type of farming that my parents did, it taught me not to go farming. And it taught me to work out that there has to be some other way of making money. Because I still reflect on farming to this day. Farming is a passion. And anything I invest in, I look at a percentage and it has to return a percentage, right? That's the way I work. But when you think of the value of money you've tied up in farming, in your machinery, in your animals, your return is drastic. It's frightening. It doesn't make it a good business. And people, they don't stop and realise that. Like when we're doing this interview today, I bought about 15 acres here in 1985. And I often say to the people that for me to let the land is the worst investment I have, and for them it's too expensive. You know, basically there's so little money in farming, you know. One of the photographs I have there would have been of my father, Michael Coppinger of Ards, who was the only one alive that's in that photograph. Jimmy O'Mahony, better known as Jimmy David. Con Keane would have been the Creamery manager. That Creamery was built in the 50s. And the road that's going to the hall and up over to Drumclough, that road was known as the New Line. That road didn't exist until the 50s. So for the people that lived in the Drumclough area, remember now we're talking before there were hardly any cars on the road, for them to go to Mass in Kealkill, they would have walked down through Drumclough, crossed the stepping stones in the river at Ards, where you come out beside the Killeenock, which is an old graveyard. They would have walked up through at the time, which was Danny Cronin's, or his father had been Dinny Den. Pat and Ann Cronin are there today. The road then took you up through Ards and up onto the road, as we call it. And then you went across and up by Noel Burke's and up over the hill, Derriere Khan, and walked down to Kealkill. And I really want to put one thing into this, which is very important. Remember, they did that fasting. This is what people forget, because if they wanted to receive at First Mass, they wouldn't have been allowed to consume anything in their stomach. And after 12 o'clock the night before. Another thing that I reflect on is seeing my first milking machine. And this, to me, was a huge thing because I think it was either 69 or 70, we got into electricity in Ards. And one of my neighbours up the road, Connie Sullivan, we'd better know him as Connie Killarney, and he had a milking machine at the time, and it was powered by a little petrol Lister engine. And I always remember the hum of that engine, because bear in mind, in those days when you lived out in the country, and if you see a car passing, you stopped and had a good look at it, because it was a pretty rarity. People were lucky to have a bicycle. So where the mobile shop came from was, so I said, in the north side, in Drumsullivan, you had Willie Carney's little shop. And then the next shop over then you had was by the school, which was known as Mrs. Patty's. Her husband was a shoemaker, I think.
Yeah.
Was he a shoemaker?
That's what I heard, yeah.
He was a shoemaker, yeah. And this now remembers before the Creamery. And then you had Michael and Molly Coughlin. And they had a shop, would have been, what would I call it, didnt, I guess it was. And
On the bend.
yeah, Mikey Coughlin would have been driving for Warner's. And on a Tuesday, after delivering the bread, they would do a round with the van around the Mealagh Valley. And basically, they would take basic groceries, as I just said at the time. Don't mention selling milk, because if a farmer was seen buying milk in those days, it was like committing murder. It was a terrible, or if a farmer was seen buying veg, they don't even have their own veg. Yeah. They were so strong, the ethos in being self-sufficient. So there's a reason why I'm mentioning there now. So then Mikey Coughlin retired and that little shop was closed. And Patch O'Connelly, I suppose would Patch would be there in Kealkill. He was driving then for Warner's, but anyway, Patch O'Connelly was driving for Warner's, and Warner's stopped baking in 1977, and they started buying bread from a bakery in Dunmanway, Cotter's Bakery in Dunmanway. So Patch or the equivalent would drive to Dunmanway every morning to pick up the bread. And Warner's closed March, the weekend before the 17th of March 1979. And Patch O'Connelly was to take over the bread round from Warner's, and he said he wasn't interested. So I was working for Con and Kitty Leary at the time. They did furniture and carpets, and they did auctioneering, and that was on the street. And they also had a premises where part of Organico is now. And I got word on the grapevine that Patcho was not interested in taking over the bread round. And I approached Patcho because I was desperate to do something at the time, because I could see at the time that if I continued what I was doing, I'd be relying on the state to put a house under me. So I said, I'll have a go at it. And I drove to Dunmanway. My transport at the time was a minivan. I found a picture of it actually recently. And I met Frankie Cotter, who owned Cotter's Bakery, and he didn't know what to make of this hairy-looking monster. I had long hair at the time. Remember, this was...
What age were you?
This was 79, and I was born in 57, so you can work that out.
23.
22. But anyway, so I had a chat with him. We actually became very good friends afterwards. So I stuck for Dunmanway. My first trip to Dunmanway was the 19th of March 1979. And I went up through Clonakillen with my minivan and I got stuck. And I retrieved back and I went up Cuasan and I started drawing bread from Dunmanway with a British Leyland minivan. And people were laughing at me because this fool hasn't a clue. They didn't realise how determined this fool was. But anyway, so I had a minivan at the time and I had a mini club in the estate, and Frank, God be good to him, on the busier days would drive one of them to Manway and I drive the other. That was all right, but so we started this 19th of March of 79.
Yeah.
And in the first 6 weeks, I crashed one van and Frank crashed the other.
Oh, bless you.
Not a great start, but something I can never forget from my father. Where Tom Dennehy's surgery is now, that was known as the Munster and Leinster Bank.
Yeah.
That was a branch of the EIB. And my father put the deeds of the 20 acres against a brand new van.
Oh my gosh, that was a huge thing, wasn't
No,
it?
that was very brave.
Yeah.
Because that's what he had. The man had no money, but that, it's a bit like I was having a conversation recently with my one remaining brother in Germany, and they were saying what his father gave him. And I said, he gave me more than that. He said, what did he give you? I said, he put the deeds of what he had against my first bread van. Yeah. You know? So that was grand.
That was sweet.
So, and I bought that from Sean Collins, who was still alive, in Dromaleague. And I'll always remember the night that I picked the van up from Sean Collins. Sean admitted to me afterwards that he did the deal on the strength of knowing I had no money. So I'd be getting finance.
Okay.
And there was a nice kickback to him from finance. Yeah. So when I presented him with a draft for £3,000 for my new van, he wasn't happy. Not happy.
You were ahead of the game, Mark.
But anyway, so I'll always remember the bank manager saying to my father and myself, remember now, he said, we will do everything bar breaking your legs to get money off you. I said he was an honest man. He was McCarthy, he was the name of that. He was acting bank manager at the time, whatever manager was there was retired. So that was grand. So anyway, going back now to the other part, so mainly what I was doing was wholesaling to the Bantry and surrounding area, to the shops and that kind of thing, Glengariff, Ballinky, Kealkill. And so when I would have my bread round finished on a Wednesday, then I would load up with groceries, and that would be milk. Things are changing now, remember, a lot of elderly people, they weren't farming. I would carry bacon, sausages, rashers, all basic groceries, bags of potatoes. People did ask me for bottles of gas, but I refused to carry them. But, and it's hard to believe that I could drop 100 to 150 loaves of bread around the Mealagh Valley on that trip. Mm-hmm. Now that changed over the years because there were some very big families there, one, and number two, the older people are dying off, and the transport was changing everything. Yeah. So
a lot of people wouldn't have had cars back then.
Correct.
So you calling to them was...
Yeah, I would call door to door then on a Wednesday, and the newspaper was very important to have the newspaper. But what I used to try to do, I must confess, would be to indulge in news as little as possible, because news took up time. Okay. You know, like I remember now the day that I would do this, I would probably work a 14-hour day. Yeah. you know, by the time I'd have started in the morning, collected bread in Dunmanway, and done my wholesale round first, then reload the van. And I also have a photograph somewhere that we'll find later of a caravan that I had parked in the yard in Ards where I used to keep the stuff in. And cigarettes were very important, tobacco, those kind of things. Alcohol we didn't dabble in. The odd person would be looking for the odd bottle of poteen, moonshine I should call it, which was all part of it. But
your visit to people would have been very important. Some people that would be...
Yeah, I had this conversation with a guy recently that does work for me, and he was complaining about an elderly lady that used to call him to do work. And he felt she was wasting his time. And I said, James, you may be the only social contact she has. Because if you roll forward in COVID, that affected an awful lot of us very badly mentally, because we were cut off. Yeah. And it led to an awful lot of scams where people, the day of somebody coming in with a shotgun to rob you is long gone. They'll now come into your computer. But anyway, going back to the shop round I did up around the valley. And yes, there was a very important social side to it because, like I said, we had a lot of elderly, unmarried men and women. And I often said at the time, looking back, like 79, that's kind of 46 years ago. Looking back then, and for some time afterwards, it looked very much like that a lot of the Mealagh Valley would not be inhabited. That should have gone, because planting was the money coming in for planting at the time was tempting. And
so the Forestry Commission were pushing for people to plant up land.
Marginal land.
Marginal land, and a lot of these houses with elderly people and the land they would have had were facing being
Correct.
planted. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So
you could see that changing the landscape, and
oh yes, it was changing big time, like. Now going back to our involvement in Ards, I think my father said that he was 6th generation in Ards, and he said that 6 brothers originated from Rolling Water Bay, and they settled in different parts in the Mealagh Valley. The O'Mahony's, you would relate now to Teddy O'Mahony.
Okay, over to the side.
Yeah, his ancestors would be some of them. Mm-hmm. There were a number of O'Mahony families. That Jimmy O'Mahony that I said that's in the picture, they were the Davids. They were known, and you had other O'Mahonys known as the Patsies, and you had the Paddys. Then in our side, we were known as the Seamus Oaks, which came from my father the James came down a straight line. My grandfather became known as Seamus Og, which means young James. So in the north side as I said, there were our gang, the Seamus Oaks, and then there were another O'Mahony family. They were known as the Tailor Mahonys. And there were another O'Mahony family up on top in Derry Khan, and they were known as the Jim Higgs, or Jim Tiggs. And so that's where the 6 brothers would have settled. And listening to my father in those days, like, there was no great value for land. People drifted in and drifted out. It was very much a different society when you go back that many generations ago. So, 2 things that changed things that got people to go to town once a week. The stigma of drawing the small farmers' dole was easing, so more farmers were drawing this. It was known as, to be like subsistence payment, like. It was called the small farmers' dole.
And there would have been a stigma on that.
Oh God, there would have been a huge stigma.
Okay, yeah.
Such a guy, he's drawing dole. Yeah. It was a huge thing. Oh yeah. And as the introduction of transport got more, and a lot of my customer base was dying. Mm-hmm. And I could see it slowly changing. But the problem then I got to a stage with what I was doing that I got too busy with my wholesale run, because the whole bread scene changed in the 80s and a lot of bakeries closed. And then I handed the shop round over to a man in Kealkill. He ran a shop later. He was a traffic warden, Jolie Han. So that was my involvement in that. And also, even when I wasn't living in Ards, the stuff was there. And if people were stuck for a packet of fags, they'd get them from my parents. You know, that, and like...
So when you were running the round, was there the shop in Gortnacowley?
No, long gone.
That was gone. Was there the shop, you mentioned the shop in Drumsullivan?
Long gone.
That was long gone. And the shop over the other side?
Long gone.
They were all gone. Yeah.
So the only shop...
What was the demise of those shops? Do you know, like...
The demise of those shops was very straightforward: transport.
Okay, yes.
One word,
Yeah.
transport. And like you see today with the country pub, isn't it going the same way? Yeah. But it's a slow death, you know. And even reflecting on the weekend there, and Graham Norton and what's his name, Ryan Tuberty, in for the Literary Festival and taking photographs, as I call it, in Gilly Evans' antique shop. Like, that shop is a social thing. Like, the financial end of a shop like that is long gone. Yeah. And I mean long gone. I call Lidl my corner shop now. This O'Mahony man, he was known as Tailor Mahoney. Okay. Because his wife, or his daughter actually, was my godmother. She married him.
And would you remember going to the tailor for...
No. No, he'd been gone before my time. Yeah. Or else when I was very, very young. Yeah. The nearest shoemaker that time for me would have been Tim Coppinger in Kealkill. Okay. Opposite what was the old Creamery. Yeah. Right? Now, I suppose the more modern shop then at the time would have been the Creamery, the Mealagh Creamery.
And what did they sell there?
So they would have sold groceries and the general groceries again, which, like I said, wouldn't be a massive selection. But the meal and flour would have been a big part of it. Mm-hmm. And also the tie-in there would be that people would be taking their milk to the Creamery. So when the Creamery started first, the milk was separated in the premises. And the skim milk went back to the farmer, and that was fed to the cattle. Oh. Yeah. Changed it at a later stage where the whole product went into Drina. Okay. You know? And then again, like, when you think of it down through the years, I'm not quite sure now what year the Creamery closed, the Mealagh Creamery closed, but I know it's documented somewhere.
I have it down as 1986.
Okay, that's the year we got married. Mm-hmm. But, you see, things are moving on. Mm-hmm. And numbers in the valley were changing drastically. And like I said, transport. Smaller numbers. Mm-hmm. You know? And again, as I said earlier, you're up now there to 1986. As I did say, you could nearly say from 1930 up to 1970, places like the Mealagh Valley stood still. They didn't really change. The only bit of, I suppose you could say, outside money coming into a place like that would be people that immigrated and sent home money.
Yeah. Do you remember getting electricity?
Yes, I do. And I can also tell you, born in 57, I was 13 when we got electricity. Okay? So I know what life is like without electricity, without running water, and no toilet in the house. And water didn't come from a tap, it came from the well. Now, I can still sit in my camper van to this day and marvel to see water coming out of a tap. Now, to tell that to a young person, they'd say you're nutty. But water, like I said,
so precious.
Water came from the well, not from a tap. So like, speaking of other events, then Maloney's up the road from us, they used to sell the oil. So you'd go there once a week, whatever, for a gallon of oil. And some people would say that was for the tilly. Well, we didn't have a tilly. Light was an oil lamp single wick, a candle, and for outside would have been the Starum lamp or Starum lantern, which again was single burner, but had a special globe around it that the wind would stop it quenching. And those actually lanterns, they burned a lot of places because people were careless with them. Straw, whatever, they set fire to it. Like, just going back to big events, the stations would have been a big event. And you'd sort of have to explain to people these days what are stations. They're basically where the priest would come around, say mass, for a number of parish, or town, not parishes, a number of town lands, and then the Jews would have been collected by the priest after the mass. And I would have served mass on some of those stations. And sometimes if you were lucky, you might get a shilling or 2 shillings of a tip, which was nice money. But the station would have been a big event. The thrashing was another big mehel, because the corn was cut, the corn was brought in. Again, Michael Maloney had a thrasher. And the day of the thrashing was a big day. And I mean it, that was a big day, because it was a getting together of a number of people, and people helped each other. There was no money. You came to me today and I went to you tomorrow and someone else the day after, whatever, right? So...
Did women help with the threshing?
Of course they did. I said earlier, the women worked harder than the men. But they were silent partners. Because if they didn't, somebody went hungry. That's reality, like. I mean, I often make the joke over the years that I thought oranges only grow at Christmas. I didn't think that oranges grew any other part of the year, like. But because you didn't see them only at Christmas. And tomatoes, you'd see them when they came from the glass house down at Donemark, where the National Learning Network is now. That was Michael Downey's. Okay? So they were seasonal.
So self-sufficiency was...
Well, you see, the turnip was very important.
Yeah.
The cabbage, carrots, the basic vegetables, parsnips.
Yeah. And would you have stored those?
Of course.
Yeah, yes.
Onions.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were very important. You had jam when you had blackberries. People didn't just go out willy-nilly and buy jam. Most of the jam was made. And like, I have to keep repeating, saying that my parents' carbon footprint was very light. When I think of what rubbish we take to the recycling centre now, there was no rubbish. Everything was reused. There was no food waste, because you had animals to eat it. Zero food waste. There was no plastic. We're back to the era of paper. Okay? And when you were finished with paper, you went in the fire to light the fire. You know?
There was no bin collection, there was no...
Bin my hat.
You know,
They were used and reused. And reused again. You know what I mean? That they were used for different things.
So making jam, you would have made jam with the blackberries?
Apples, different. It was whatever was available.
Apples. How were the hedgerows different to how they are now?
They've changed to a frightening degree. The grasshopper is making a slight comeback. Our grasshopper had practically disappeared, right? But that's down to farming practices. The frog is almost a rare sighting now. We hardly ever see a frog now, like, you know. We have a reasonable amount of wildlife and birds, because they seem to be cuter to survive. But, like, because in Ards we live by the river, we'd have you'd have otters, badgers. Rabbits were just tinny penny.
A nice little income for you.
It was until the myxomatosis came along.
Hares, would you say?
Very scarce. Hares, no, they say hares and rabbits don't mix that well.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of have one or the other.
Yeah.
Another thing in later years that played havoc with the rabbit was, I think there was a mink farm down in Ballydehob that the mink got out of.
Yeah.
And the mink went feral, and they literally, decimated everything. Yeah. And a cat is not capable of killing a mink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The mink is more vicious. Now, we would have fished in the river for brown trout. The salmon never got up as far as the Mealagh in where we were. I think the furthest they could possibly come was to the waterfall at Inchitlock.
Yeah, yeah.
I think.
Too high there for them, yeah.
Yes.
But you would have fished for round trout?
We would, yeah.
Yeah.
They were small,
Yeah.
but they were very sweet.
Yeah.
The sport that we grew up with was road bowling.
Yeah.
The road bowling was very big. There were some big tournament scores out in Drumsullivan. But
would you have just played that locally, or would you have travelled much?
we'd have travelled, yeah. Like, it was big all through West Cork. So I'm going to tell a story around the road bowling. There's a lot of gambling involved in road bowling. And I had a really good summer in '78, and one of the later festivals coming up, and it's coming up now soon, would be Ballabee. It's a festival in Dunmanway, and the bowling would have been a very big part of that. But Ballabee in 1978 cost me £200, and my wages were £30 a week.
Yeah.
So I often use the expression in life that you have to take yourself aside every so often in life and have a chat with yourself and ask yourself, where are we going with this? And I did. And I never went to a score of bowling after that. So that was '78. I was heading for Germany the start of '79. I had two brothers working in Germany at the time. There was nothing here. There was no way I could put a roof over my head. And then this thing came up, and I said, I'll give this a go. I took fantastic years, 79, 18, 80, 81, but never having money, I blew it. Yeah. So in 1981, the late Dennis Cotter opened a bakery in Bantry. And he approached me on the street one day, and he offered me a job to drive for him, and proceeded to tell me that once they opened the bakery, I would have no business bringing bread to Bantry. So I had 2 weeks to think about it. But anyway, the result of it is that I had no money in '81, and 4 years later I bought this place and paid for it in cash. Lovely. Thanks to Dennis Cotter. Yeah. The human being is very much like the animal. When you're threatened, you do one of 3 things: fight, flight, or freeze. Isn't that what we do?
Yeah.
And the same bread bought the 3 buildings in Glengarriff Road before we developed them. We were able to buy them up front. But the other thing I didn't mention now in all of this is that behind every good man is a better woman, right? And I do have a wonderful partner.
You got lucky.
Mm-hmm.
You definitely got lucky.
But you see, I keep telling people it's much better to be born lucky than born rich. Because people think it's great to be born rich, but there are many disadvantages to being born rich. Because when you're born rich, you have high expectations. But if you feel you're lucky, everything is a bonus.
Yeah, and turning on that tap in your camper van after coming out.
And marvelling that, and you can even have hot water, like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I never knew what hot water was come out of a tap. And people, you know, I'm not 100 years old.
Yeah.
You know?
So your appreciation of simple things is so much greater because of
it's getting more
of your early years. Yeah.
It's actually getting more as I'm getting older.
Yeah.
Because most of the travel, I go out every weekend. Liz wouldn't go, every weekend. But I go out every weekend in the camper from the 1st of April to the end of October. Okay? I hardly ever leave West Cork. We're in South Carolina this weekend, and people would say to me, do you go down to France in the camper? And I say, for what? I did it when the kids were young. So when people, you meet people last week, oh, the weather is terrible. And I say, right, do you want to be in 19 degrees or would you like to be in 48? We're paleface. We cannot handle the heat. We might as well admit it. And so I share one thing with you. I'm left-handed. No, excuse me, no. It's not all negative.
Not at all.
Where it caught me going to school was two things. I'm left-handed and I'm dyslexic, right? And I thrived under Peggy, but when the school closed in 68, if anybody were to ask me what's my standard of education, I would say that I have a very good standard of education up to and including 4th class national school. The rest is street education. That's what it is. So I want to tell a funny story just to kind of lighten the mood of this. I suppose I tell a story that kind of it fits for me. A guy was down on his luck and he went into a large firm to look for a job as a paper boy. Sure, it's no trouble to get a job as a paper boy. Now, at the time, he had no money, he had no address, he had nothing. And he was sent to the office, another office, to fill out the papers. Address, email address, don't have an address, don't have an email address, do you have a mobile number? No, I have nothing. They said, look, you have no contact, we're sorry, we can't give it a job. And he left the place very despondent. And the little bit of money he had left, he bought what we would call now a chip of tomatoes, which would be 6 kilos. And he sat on the street and he sold them singly. And he doubled his money. And he did the same the next day. And he did this for a while. And eventually he got a cart and added some more products. And eventually he got a van. And eventually he set up a warehouse and the thing went very well. And one day he had a guy in the office interviewing him to sell him a financial product. And he said, whatever, your email address? He said, I never had an email address. My God, he said, what would you be if I had an email address? I'd be a paper boy.
There you go. Yeah.
It depicts the ethos of what Liz and myself have created. Yeah. And it's like, the fun is in the chase. So, I met Liz in January 1980. She started working in that shop in Coomleigh Bridge.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like we've done the full circle. We now have bought it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right. We tenants moving in there the 1st of August. But it's weird. I cannot explain where it came from. I no notion of ever buying a place again, but it happened.
Yeah. And as you say, it's full circle.
It's full circle.
Yeah.
But that's where we met. And like myself, Liz would have come from as wealthy a family as myself. But look, do you know, we've been lucky that we've been able to live together and work together.
Yeah, you're a great team.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Do you know what I mean? That we can live together and work together, because a lot of couples can live together but they can't work together. Yeah, but they can't do both.
No, you're a fab team.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I've been told that when there were the old dances up in my house, the old schoolhouse, that the dances up there, you'd have a jam jar for your
beer.
Cup of beer. So will you tell me a little bit about the parties in the
school?
The school closed down.
The school was closed.
Jerry bought it and he let it be used for parties.
Yeah, in 1968 the school was closed and we were given free transport and we were taken to Drumclog. So Peggy would have ran, we called them hoolies at the time, And I just heard a car driving up, but probably something for storage. But anyway, even though Peggy was a non-drinker, there was plenty of drink there. The drink would have been picked up from J.J. Crowley's. Peggy's sister Hen was married to J.J. We'd get snacks and bits and pieces, and those were ran as fundraisers. And when you mentioned about the jam jars, they would actually come those parties. The jam jar wasn't the way out. We'd nearly amalgamated to the glass. But when the ran dances would have been in the country houses, drinking porter from a jam jar was quite normal. It's no big deal, like, you know. But just Peggy was the main organiser. I used to run them with Peggy, and basically they were ran as fundraisers.
So you'd have a bit of music.
Oh, plenty of music, yeah. And the country scene was slowly changing. You see, we had a lot of immigration out of here as well. And most of my generation immigrated. That's why I said earlier about that I was in 78, I was going to join my two brothers in Germany, because there was nothing here. But then, as I reflect getting older, I see it as a privilege that I was lucky enough to be able to stay here and raise a family and make a living in this area. We mightn't have a quantity here, but we have a quality.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, and that quality is very special.
Very precious.
It's very precious, yeah. Now, another comment I suppose I make about farming, and it's a joke I often make. I says, my parents, they had no machines really. There would have been the spraying machine, the butter churn, the machine for chopping the furze, the plough, the harrow, the scuffler. But there was no, remember they didn't have a tractor, like, so everything was horse drawn. Yeah. And I suppose the way I tell the story is that I put it this way, I says, my parents had no machines, but they had 4 donkeys and I was the youngest. That's how I describe it. But
you knew what hard work was?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I know the gorse used to be used for animal feed, we put through it.
Not in our place. No. Because even though the farm was small, there was no rough land in it. Okay. If you know what I mean. Yeah. So the gorse would have been mixed in. Yes, it would be. What you call gorse now, I call furze. Yeah. I apologise, and we got our lines crossed there. Yes, the furze, my father actually sat a gorse, or we call it furze, you call it gorse. He sat a small field with furze in it.
So he planted?
He planted furze. Yeah. Facing north, they reckon was the best furze you could grow. Mm-hmm. And that furze would be cut with a hook and gullogue, mm-hmm, and brought in and chopped for the horse. And that was actually very healthy feeding for the horse. And in the process of the chopping of that furze, something that my brother Frank took to the grave, and a lot of people, they used to say, my father used to say in every town that somebody was missing a piece of a finger because of this furze machine, because the cogs weren't covered. Yeah. So I think about 1959 or 60, Frank had the top of his finger chopped off. And even in later years, you see, the nail didn't grow across the top. And when I remember even in the hospital, and I used to tell people that no, that finger he wasn't born with that. The top of that got chopped off in a furze machine. Yeah. And there was no hospital in Bantry that time. So it must be soon after the time I was born. Because
so what was done with him?
He had to go to Cork on the train.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that was a horrendous journey, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so they
Very distressing.
very distressing, yeah. But we call it furs anyway, but that would be chopped up with this machine. There's actually one of them out there, and it would be chopped upstairs over where the horse would be in the stable, and then you pull the trap door and you lift the stuff down to the horse to eat it.
Okay, very tidy.
But those animals had very little health problems because what they were eating was organic.
Yeah.
It was extremely healthy.
Yeah.
You know.
And would there have been feed bought in for the horses, or would you have
As little as possible.
As little as possible, yeah.
Just being quite honest with you.
Yeah.
Horse at the time was seen in a small farm to eat as much as 3 cows.
Yeah.
That was the ratio that I used to listen to my father saying. You know, that...
But they were an absolutely component
yeah.
of...
So another story I tell is where Noel Burke is living today, Noel and Nina. That piece of ground was on about 13 acres. Michael Hurley bought 3 or 4 years ago there, Michael Hurley, that works in the Tailor Centre, he bought the rest of it, right? And in the mid-50s, that was for sale, and my father did a deal on it for £300, right? He had 100, and he failed to raise the other 2. Look at the top note.
Okay, yeah.
That wouldn't buy much for you today,
Yeah.
right? That's the big note. And I think he made a vow to himself that he would never again try to borrow money. And he didn't.
Yeah.
And his attitude was, now the electricity came to the Mealagh Valley prior to when we got it, but quite a lot of people didn't take it the first time because they were afraid they couldn't pay the bill.
There's a cost to it, yeah.
Yeah. Now the other thing, thanks to Peggy, whether it was a good blessing or a cursing, there was no public transport to second level in Bantry until the very late 60s. And Peggy managed to get my oldest brother Dave, second guy James, or Seamus Oak again, and they won scholarships to Farren Ferris.
To boarding school.
To boarding school. And the thinking at that time, you see, they'd be heading towards the white collar.
Yeah.
And I think after spending 5 years in Farren Ferris, I'd say the next time that they entered the church was when the day we got married. I think they'd seen enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, the hypocrisy of the whole thing. But Peggy meant well, don't get me wrong.
Absolutely, yeah.
Bridget Connor got a scholarship the same time. And was there somebody else? It was definitely Bridget.
But for most, they wouldn't have gone to secondary school because it was too difficult to get there.
Couldn't get there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
So
just-
if you were within reasonable distance,
And you couldn't
might
do- and you-
cycle, but
And you couldn't afford to go to boarding school.
yeah.
Yeah,
And you were needed on the farm.
correct. Now, I reckon my father would have made, even though he was a good survivor, I reckon if he had a chance, he'd have made a great businessman.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because he was a good mentor to me. Because in things I would do in life, I discussed with him.
Yeah.
And I could get rational answers.
His lessons are a big part of who you are today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my mother then was much more cautious and wouldn't take a chance.
She had to be married.
She had no choice.
Yeah.
You know, she had no choice, like. But
When you mentioned she used to bring you to school sometimes, I was just wondering.
in a Mark 1 Ford Cortina, I've one parked up there.
Really?
Yes. Not the same colour, hers was dark green.
So she would have had a car when a lot of people didn't have cars back.
Correct. And in those days, not every school teacher had a car.
Yeah. But she lived over
Drumclog.
Drumclog, and she used to a lot of the time walk over to my house across the river to work. Yeah.
And sometimes she would.
But when I was
drive
going,
the kids.
but when I,
Before she had the car.
but she wouldn't be allowed to do that now.
No. No.
Yeah. And I can still smell that car.
Yeah.
That was probably the first car I ever sat into.
Yeah.
You know. The rotavator, that was a huge thing when it came around. But the downside of the rotavator was that it spread the ducks. We used to call them capogues at the time. But because when you break up the root of the duck,
you get 10 ducks out of it. Yeah.
You could, or 50.
Yeah. And was the rotavator diesel or how?
The rotavator, so the people doing the rotavating in our area at the time would be Neil Sweeney and his brother Sean. They're still alive.
Yeah.
And I'll always remember their father, Pat, telling me he bought a new Forestry Major in the mid-50s. And it was £950. And the battery was 10% of the price of the tractor.
Okay.
So in real terms, batteries got really cheap. And they were crap batteries, so you'd be looking to get a year out of it. Yeah. But when Neil Sweeney and his brother Sean, when they were doing the rotavating, they used to work literally day and night. So the rotavator was an attachment to the tractor, and it was driven by the PTO. To be picked up with the 3-point linkage in the back, and with the PTO on the tractor, that's what it would drive it. But like, you see, machines were pretty scarce.
Yeah. And when you'd invested that amount of money into it, you wanted to see your return.
But I'm telling you, they literally worked day and night.
Yeah, yeah.
I've no other way. To hear either Neil or Sean coming in the middle of the night doing the rotavating was no notice whatsoever. We could be gone to bed for hours when you'd hear the tractor coming in doing the rotavating. Yeah. So to make it pay, they worked it 24 hours a day.
And what difference did that rotation make to your parents as farmers?
The difference it made in the farming was, before that, you ploughed the field and you broke it up with a harrow.
And the horse pulling it.
Correct. And the rotavator, you'd plough it and turn over the sod, but would break it up much better.
But there was a cost to it.
There was a cost. But look, with every... another thing I mentioned here is he'd have sold quite a lot of potatoes in Bantry. Okay. And those potatoes would have been taken into Bantry with the horse and cart. We call it a crate, some people call it a creel. But his main customer that would have been Mary Breen in Glengarriff Road, later Centra. Okay. Now closed, like a lot of more small places.
And what else would have been sold off the farm?
Eggs, butter.
Butter, yeah.
Yeah, and my father probably was slow to change because they didn't, when the creamery opened, they didn't go to the creamery straight away.
Okay.
You know, like I remember the butter churn and the separator in the back kitchen in Ards. I can distinctly remember it. And turning the churn and separating the milk and making the butter.
And as a child, you would have done that. You would
of course.
The churn.
Oh yeah, that was.
Jobs. Yeah.
But that was normal. Like.
And why wouldn't your parents have brought the milk to the creamery then? Why did they continue doing it at home?
I suppose.
Initially.
I suppose they didn't trust change.
Yeah.
Do you know? Sometimes people fight change. But I keep telling people, even with technology, you can't fight it.
Yeah, but sometimes you can hold back and see how it goes for others first.
But that's what they did.
That's what they did.
That's what they did.
So you mentioned your mother was cautious.
Yeah, but like,
she had to be.
And if anybody asked me, what's the biggest single change in my life? Technology.
Yeah.
It's just, and like with the mobile phone, I'm only using a fraction of it. Google Maps, dream, fantastic.
You know where you are in the camper van now.
It's not just that. Last year, I flew into Faro, got a taxi to where I picked up the camper van. I rented a camper van. I drove along the south coast of Portugal, and everything I needed, my tickets, all the information I wanted, places to go, places of interest, places to park up at night, everything inside my pocket.
Yeah. It is phenomenal, isn't it?
And no paper.
Yeah.
And I mean that. And the cost of travel in reality has come down an awful lot.
Yeah.
Now I must touch on another subject, going to the races in Leheden.
Okay.
Now,
I didn't know there were races in there.
going, not a big event, going to the races in Leheden. Where were the races in Leheden? Down in the industrial estate. That was the race field.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Correct. And it was the perfect design of a field because you had the flat inch, there's 13 acres in that field, and you had the flat inch in the bottom, and then you had the ground rising up so you could wash the horses.
It's like a natural amphitheatre.
Correct. Now, one specific memory that will always stay with me about the races. Where Bantry Tire Centre is now, that was then Flatley's factory. A lot of people don't realise that Bantry has a small history of making electrical products. That was Flatley's factory. Okay? And the one thing, when I'm connecting Flatley's and the races, right, you know how certain things stick in your brain, and when you watch the show jumping out in the RDS, the way the Flatley kids used to be turned out, it's like, and the horses and the whole dressage, to me that was fairy tale stuff.
They were scrubbed up well.
But it was easy to do it because their father was paying no bills.
Yeah.
He knocked about 10 years out of it. I do believe that there was hardly anybody that involved in the building of the factory got paid.
Oh my gosh.
So one of the houses we bought maybe 20 years ago, I found one of the Flatley dryers in the attic and I gave it into the museum. Because like I said, Bantry has a limit. People don't realise that Bantry has a little history with making electrical products. So they made dryers. I think they made some other kind of stuff as well. But like, this dryer was a very simple thing because it was basically like a tub with a heater at the bottom, right? And rails on top, and just the heat went up. That would be in chewing electricity.
Yeah.
But look, there were different times, but they were known as the Flatley dryer. And the name was still on this one. But that memory of the races.
So those children dressed up in their clothes for the dressage, they would come out to the races here in Leheden.
They were the ones to look up to.
What would the races, who would bring their horses
You'd
to
have-
it? Who would race?
You had Dinny Six and that used to have horses. You had different Michael Cavan out west side of Bantry had horses. There were a number of people that had horses.
And they would be actual race horses.
Oh yeah, I know. You know, there would be
Yeah.
no, Jesus, these would be cart horses.
Yeah.
And
So it must have been quite a spectacle. And
but
quite an event.
that was a huge treat to go to the races. And if the day of the races rained, that was heartbreaking. And more than likely I'd have gone to the races probably on the carrier of the parents' bike. That was the transport. And then when you got a bit older you walked. You know? But like that's why I wrote down some pointers because the races are one of the things they'd be long forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah, I never knew there were races there. Yeah.
You live and learn.
Yeah.
I know they've gone a long time because we're here since 85 and Murnans were here before us.
Yeah.
So you may be going back to maybe 70s, yeah.
Yeah.
The Scoirarte thing was very, very important because that was the social get together for people in the evening. And basically whoever could tell the best story got the audience. And or I sometimes say whoever could tell the best lies. But again, the television started to get rid of the scripting. Because you went into somebody's house and there was something on, shh. you know. They were watching something more important.
So before television, what was the etiquette around the Scoirarte? Who went where and what would happen? Was it women and men?
It was more, I'm going to say to you, it was more of a male than a female thing. It was more male orientated. Yeah. It was also, remember, when you're going back to my father's time, that you were kind of back to the man, the provider. Even though the woman did all the work, she got no recognition. You know, and that was reality.
That was the way it was. Yeah.
It was reality, like. But like I said, and that's why I mentioned about this cashless society. You had a lot of bartering. Labour was bartered. I gave you a day and you give me a day and somebody else, you know what I mean? That's how that was done. And
was time treated equally between people? Or
ish.
Some time?
Nothing is ever equal, but close enough. But again, you see, thanks to the power of the church, you had big numbers in every house. Yeah. Life expectancy was short, and you had a lot of infant mortality and that kind of thing. My mother lost one before me and lost one after me. Yeah. So she had 6 pregnancies in 6 years. Oh my gosh. I smile now when people say they have problems. Yeah. That was survival.
And there was very little choice in it. Yeah.
And that's why I added a piece here. Farming taught me there must be some other way to make money. Yeah. And I keep repeating that. And this is bringing me back to, like I said, the older I get, the more I appreciate being able to live in the area. Yeah. And we have great peace in the area, and we have very little criminality, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. You know, we're so lucky. Like I remember putting in an alarm in the house about 35 years ago. And the guy that fitted it said, "You must have a problem." I said, "No, I don't have a problem." God, he said, you must be the first person that ever put an alarm that didn't have a problem. I said, "There's no point in closing the stable door when the horse is gone." True. We did the very same thing. We were on Glengariff Road. As I tell you a guy this morning, in '95 we spent £20,000 on security. On cameras. We blitzed with cameras. We staff at the time, they said, "No one will come in." I said, "Let us worry about that." Staff theft was a huge thing then. Yeah. Customer theft was nothing. I mean nothing. The big one that was staff theft, delivery theft. Okay, yeah. Staff first, delivery second, the customer came in a very poor third. Wow. But we believe that the 20,000 we spent in security was an investment.
You earned it, yeah.
We reckon that it paid for itself.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, prevention is much cheaper than cure.
The furs, do you remember what year that really changed? That it went from cutting the furs, and this is a resource, to people started to burn? Like, did they burn in your day ever? Is it that at all a thing?
You're talking about like hill burning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if that was like something that was done before.
You see, hill burning and the growing of the furs are two very different subjects.
I'd love to hear that.
No, I mean it. No, they're two very different subjects. People always burn the hill. They use it as a method. No, it's cruel to wildlife, very cruel, but it would be used as a method to control the growth, and you get a great run of grass up after it. So the burning of the hill and the type of forest cutting I'm talking about had no relation. But I will answer a question when you said, where did the forest cutting change? When the more the tractor came in, the horse was disappearing. And plus the fact that all these pursuits were very time consuming. And when the tractor was finished in the evening, you didn't have to feed it. Yeah. You parked it until the following morning. You put diesel in it if it needed, but you didn't have to feed it and you didn't have to rest. Mm-hmm. So like the more the machinery came in, feeding the forest to the animal was very different, I'll repeat that, to burning the hill. There was always a certain amount of vandalism, but a certain amount of it is a certain amount of it is done for that reason. So my mother came from a place called Lochadiveen. As the crow flies, it's less than a mile from here, but it's over on the road turning to the right up past Shea's garage.
Yeah.
Lochadiveen is up there. There were 3 Cronin families living there. But when we were kids, my grandfather and grandmother, they would come to visit us on a Sunday with the donkey and cart. And that was about 3 miles. So you can just work out how long it took to just the journey over and the journey back.
And that was just a stone's throw away.
A stone's throw away, but time didn't matter.
Time was,
Probably one, and then one of the first really big trauma in my life would have been when my grandmother, I was about 11 when my grandmother died sudden. That was my grandmother from my mother's side. I didn't know my grandparents from my father's side because my grandmother from my father's side died 4 years before I died, and my grandfather from my father's side died 7 weeks before I was born. So I didn't get to know either one of those, but I always saw my grandmother, for somebody who had no money, she had a really big heart. I'm going to change that now, and I'm going to go back to baking bread. And I said practically all bread was baked at home. And we had 3 bachelor neighbours that lived next door to us. They were O'Driscolls. And where my mother would have baked the bread in the oven, they used to bake it in the vestibule. And we used to love to go there because it's such a different bread.
Different flavour, yeah.
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 Baking, and I still have memories of you know, the way the coals would be put on top of the vestibule.
You have a really nice, slow, steady heat.
Correct?
Yeah.
But like that in the story, you know, when people, they're timing this and timing that. My mother never timed anything.
Yeah, she just knew. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But like when I mentioned that earlier, like the amount of work that she did with that Stanley ate.
Okay. So what would you recall from your childhood of people helping out with charities, helping out whether it be neighbours or local charities or national charities? How important was that?
Charity was a local thing.
Yeah.
But you see, the other thing you have to remember is we were all poor and we didn't know it because everybody was poor. If that makes any sense to you. And you see, charity, as you see it today, it had a very different ethos then. Charity could be helping a neighbour that was in trouble. You talked about money because you didn't have money to give. Whereas I see the whole thing now has gone full circle. And the first hat I've been wearing for the last 25 years is the Bantry lifeboat. That's my first hat I wear. And I'm seeing with a number of years that people would much prefer now to give money than time. People are very time poor. Worse than ever.
Yeah.
And when you think back at the way my parents worked, but they still weren't time poor. You know, you can see what I'm coming at.
And helping out neighbours was an integral part.
It was just a natural part, yeah. It was life.
Yeah.
You know, and I suppose then if you want to roll on to the Celtic Tiger, I had a very simple way of depicting the Celtic Tiger. I said it made an awful lot of donkeys think they were racehorses. Because everybody had money, but it wasn't necessarily their money.
Yeah.
As a guy from Rosscarbery said to me, he said, you'd be sitting on the Friday evening, he said, they all passed driving Mercedes, he said, but he didn't know who owned them.
A lot of flash.
So, as my old neighbour, Tom Driscoll, used to say, the pledge was the pocket was a great pledge. If the pocket was empty, you couldn't buy anything.
Yeah.
that the pocket was a great pledge. But like the saying, when boys had money, they were men, but when the money was spent, they were all boys again. Yeah. My first bicycle, I think it was one I picked up for nothing. And then I started repairing bikes, and I made a few bob out of bikes. And I put my first £1,000 together out of buying, repairing and selling Honda 50s from Ards. And when I went on the road in '79, there was a post office strike, I couldn't get my £1,000. Do you know, I call my life a journey.
Yeah.
And like if anybody thinks the journey is going to be straight, God, they're in for a rough ride.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because nothing is... But I think if you appreciate the small things, the big things fall into themselves.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's like where you're here now today, there was a nice farm here. There was 106 acres, including the industrial estate.
Okay.
Right? You are now in the farm yard up opposite the McCarthy Bonnie farm.
Okay.
The McCarthy original Bonnie house was up the back of that place 10 years ago. But the big house was long knocked at that stage, and there's other stuff put up there instead of it. But so Justin McCarthy was the man that was here, and he died in the early 50s. And the Land Commission was a big thing that time. And if you weren't farming your farm, the neighbours could apply to the Land Commission to have the land taken off you. A thing called a compulsory purchase. Yeah. So, where you are here, the farm was divided up as follows. The field here beside us, just up that way, Sean O'Cronin got 13 acres. Another farmer, Dan Leary, got another 11 or 12 acres, whatever. John Sweeney, his son, is still farming here. He got another 11 or 12 acres. McGrath's across the river, they got another 11 or 12 acres. And Teddy Dease's father would have got another 11 or 12 acres. Okay. So that much land was taken off them. I had the pleasure of meeting Geraldine McInerney. She was around here about 10 years ago. I don't know if she's dead or alive. She was the first woman that read the 9 o'clock news in Ireland. And she gave me a great insight and a history into this. So what we have here today, they managed to retain that, and they retained the piece up there. This was 15 acres, they retained that, and they retained 10 acres over here, where Gerald and Christine, a man from Glengarriff, bought that afterwards. And what is known as the racecourse field. So that they retained that, they managed to retain that much. Then what happened in '85 was that David was the son that got the place, and we bought this from him. So this wasn't land commission, this was a straight sale. Yeah, and so was we still call it the racecourse field, even though you never heard it. Mm-hmm. So you will go away with a few nuggets of information.
Certainly,
you will, but things like Jackie Willie in the shop, they'd be long gone. Most people wouldn't even think about that. The other guy, Willie Carney, with the other small shop, you have a question?
Honey, yeah. And I was wondering if someone in the valley kept bees.
Not really.
Not really?
Be honest, no, not really. There was a fear of bees.
A fear of them?
Yeah. That might sound a bit weird to you, like there's a lot. Bees now are quite fashionable.
Mm-hmm. No, we're both beekeeping.
No, that's what I mean, like that. And you see, it's a combination of both things, because stories get handed down of people getting stung.
Yeah.
And when stories were told in the Scoirarte house, they were like the snowball going down the hill. They never got smaller.
Yeah. It's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, Yeah. And yes, things get handed down.
But But no one would have could you buy it in the shop, honey? Like, would have it been a commodity still?
Such a luxury.
We didn't buy much in the shop.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you.
And sugar would have been cheaper and more.
You see,
I suppose. Yeah.
the few things you bought, like sugar, salt, bread soda, flour, tea, and you wouldn't be seen buying veg. Oh no, you wouldn't be seen buying veg, and if you're seen buying potatoes. But I suppose of course, the way you grow up, it affects you. Now, when it comes to the cattle here on the land, and every new tenant that comes along, they always go to the man to keep an eye on the cattle. And I says, guys, stop. If you want somebody to look after your cattle, talk to Liz. Liz has saved several cattle.
Yeah.
Several cattle for people. I have a saying, I will trade in anything that will stay where I put it.
Yeah.
That's me.
A wandering cow. Yeah.
Is definitely out of the question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
So that was a kind of a thing that I followed. And I will go back to the farming thing again, and even the big farmers. The business sense behind it, it's not working for me. If you actually, it's like any time we ever bought a house to rent it out, I had a ratio that 1 year's gross rent must be 10% of what I spend. That's gross, for taxes, for charges, whatever, right? And that's what an awful lot of people went seriously wrong in the Celtic Tiger. You owned your house was paid for, and you said, we'll either build a house, we'll buy another house. And if you built a house, you built the house to the standard you wanted to live in, and you let it to me and I didn't respect it. And then I broke your heart. But the margin had gone from 10% down to maybe 3 or 4. And my father used to say, if you're sailing too close to the wind, and you're familiar with the water, I've spent years sailing myself, things will go wrong. When you point up to it, you know what happens when you point up? Yeah. He used to always say, when you're sailing too close to the wind, it's dangerous.
Very well.
Yeah, and sailing too close to the wind is over-borrowing, overextending yourself, overextending in many ways. That's what sailing too close to the wind can mean in life. And so farming doesn't return that 10%. Some cases it might return 1 or 2. And the volume of money that's poured in for such a small income, I can't get my head around it. I'm sorry, but that's how I...
But there wasn't choices, was there? Your parents wouldn't really have had.
But I had a choice.
Other choices, and
yeah. I had no education, but I had it. Yeah. I had a
drive.
A drive, I call it. Yeah. Because when I was on the road selling bread, nothing less than a bullet had put me down. Yeah. I was so hungry to make money. Yeah. But and you know what? I'm actually very lucky. I'm dealing with the public heading on 55 years. And I enjoy people as much today as the day I started out. And when we left Gallifrey, a lot of people said to me, oh, the public are tough to deal with. I said, no, that's the piece I'll miss most. And I did. Because I enjoy people, and I take them as I find them, with no preconceptions. But I won't be falsely drawn in either. And like Liz would often hear me using the expression, such a person, they're not on my Christmas card list. And usually when I get some Liz's, you don't send Christmas cards anyway. But it's an expression I use. Or like something could have happened 50 years ago, I'd say that's a year and a half ago. And people would look at you. The whole growing up in the Mealagh Valley, it was a great education. Like when I'm looking at faces here now that are gone out of that photograph, and one of the two of those people that really anchored in the valley are in both ends, Christy Hurley and Michael Bryan. Yeah. Like, I remember when we were in Drumcloak School, Michael Bryan, you know where Michael Bryan lives, out at the end of the valley. And Michael's father suffered from poor health. And Michael would go to town with the horse and cart from Clonakillen for whatever supplies. That was a long day.
Right. Yeah.
Sure, when you got to Drumcloak, you're only halfway. You know?
What would you remember, like, let's say in the winter time, how was the school heated?
The school would have been heated with at that time, open fires, right? There would have been a tradition where the parents would bring a load of turf to the school each. That was kind of dying out at that stage, but that was still a thing for the heat. But open fires. I can say nothing negative about Peggy. I've no negative memory of Peggy.
Yeah.
She was like a great aunt to us.
She's lovely. Yeah.
And I had that relationship with the people I worked for the longest. As the joke I make to people, I said I spent 4 years in university. That was in Barrack Street. With, George Connie, retired, his parents.
Okay.
Yeah. And I got a great education from them. Yeah. And we had a great education. We had a great rapport. We got on really well. Yeah. And even the old man at the time, old Connie, dead now for years, he made it easier for me to buy this place by the way we organised the meeting.
Yeah.
And I always say, if you want to get something done, talk to the head, not the hand. And we did the very same thing now with the last place we bought. We got together with the guy that owned it, and in 10 minutes we shook hands. It doesn't take forever to buy something. You can over research a thing. And you can do so much research, you can confuse yourself. The one thing I did learn from Old Connell area was that when he went to change the car, he'd do every dealership in the county of Cork, and he always finished up with a bargain that didn't suit him. So I couldn't call that a bargain. But that's life. Going down to Riley's shop on a Sunday was a treat.
Riley's shop.
Where was Riley's shop?
Yeah.
Riley's had 2 shops. Okay. They had a little shop directly opposite the church in Kealkill. That's something you wouldn't have known.
Yeah.
A little tin shack. Right? And when you go down to the bottom of the village, the first house on the right hand side when you turn for Cork, that was Riley's shop.
Okay.
And then you had Jackie Barnock's, which was Jolie Hans later, just behind that.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And you had a small little shop down in the village as well, O'Sullivan's.
Yeah.
Or down by Carriganas Castle.
Okay.
And the post office.
Yeah.
But like, just the whole thing looked like a simple thing. The size in sandals I look for, I've done the shops in town regularly, I can't buy them. And I walk a lot, and I walk a lot in sandals. And I sat down last Thursday and I bought my sandals from Amazon. Did we ever think we'd be doing such a thing?
Yeah.
And that's where the whole grocery thing is changing. That's why there are so many small shops empty in towns, because those kind of businesses are not standalone anymore.
Yeah.
So it's like, go back to where that shop was in Coomleigh Bridge. The man that ran the shop there, Teddy O'Brien. Teddy did extremely well. But then, like, he could see himself, the car was starting to close him. You know, and again, the small farmers' dole changed everything, because people they had to go to town to collect the dole. Like, I make a joke to Liz now about the old age pension. I says on a Friday morning, I must go to town to collect the pension. So the pension is paid through the bank. Yeah. But I just make the joke, I'm just going down to collect the pension. But
it's a ritual.
It's a ritual. Well, I do a thing on a Friday. I close up on a Thursday evening. I go to town on a Friday morning, and there are the numbers. We meet up for breakfast. It's a social thing. And everybody is sober, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And you can have an intelligent conversation. So I make Friday morning, and I do the market, and it's a social thing. There are a number of people we meet, have a chat, and I know a lot of the traders. Because when I used to do house clearance, I used to give the stuff to the traders. Like I had one guy I'd give books to, I had another guy I'd give bric-a-brac to, you know, just, you have to get rid of this stuff, like, or else dump it. And we don't, like I said, it has to be moved on properly. Like I said to somebody, the day of having a bonfire at the back of the house is well gone.
It's long gone, yeah.
Yeah, although some people believe it isn't, but I
was wondering about Liz, you know, as well, with going back to that shop, if you could kind of like, do you remember the moment you met her? Do you remember what that was like?
Right. I think it was either the 20th or the 28th of January. But see, there was a little spanner in the works because I was in a relationship at the time. Okay? Actually, Liz found a photograph of the person I was in a relationship at the time. But Liz reckoned the morning we shook hands, something happened. And I would have been too married this girl I was with at the time. Like Liz said, it took me 2.5 years to wake up. Like I said, I was in a relationship with this girl, and but Liz reckoned something happened the morning we shook hands. And like she said, she even used the brush on me, but it didn't work. But we got together 2.5 years later. So January 81, kind of, I'd say August 83. And we got married the day Chernobyl went up.
It's an anniversary.
And you did some good work, charity work around that.
Well,
subsequent years.
We did, but the most frightening part of my trip to Belarus was the sheer, I thought we were heavy drinkers here. The sheer abuse of alcohol. Yeah. It frightened me. Yeah. And I do mean it absolutely. But you see, it was easy fundraising in 2007 because sure, people would throw money out like. Because at that time, at that time in the lifeboat, we changed the boat, and we went out to fundraise, and we'd organised that we'd get a loan from the credit union to finance the boat, and we finished up banking the price for another boat.
Very nice.
It was so positive. But go back to Liz, and I do say it like that, behind every good man is a better woman. I've been very fortunate. I can honestly say we've never gone to bed not talking. Never. And even if I were away, it doesn't matter where I am. If I was away for the weekend, even on my own, we'd never go to bed without a chat. Right? And it might happen yet, but we've never really had a real shouting match or an argument. I always say, what are you? What came before you? And it's what came before you is going to impact, because when you're at the most spongy learning part of your life, who are you with? Your parents. Well, hopefully, you know, unless things go wrong. But yeah, it's kind of weird. Like I said, we shook hands, I think it's the 20th January, Liz said, 1980. And like I said, we didn't get together straight away. But like people have met in different circumstances, but we can say we met across the counter. I was the breadman and Liz was working there. But it's weird that we finished up buying the place.
Yeah. No, there's a lovely poetry to that.
What I always say to people is, if your head is in the right place, you can deal with a lot. And when you see me walking over the Mealagh Valley out to Inchlock in the morning, that's my morning medication.
Yeah.
And some people don't get it. And for the people that don't get it, there's no point in explaining. So what I do, okay, the river's in flood at the moment, so I can't do one part of the job. So when the river is down, what I've been doing since mid-April, I walked into Inchlock, crossed the bridge, and only up there about 50 yards, there's a lovely little pool, in for a swim, and walk back. And this morning, I wanted to go out early, so I got up at 6:30, and I was going to be walking before 7 o'clock. And people say, like, you see Loopy out walking at 7 o'clock in the morning. But somebody gave me a description of what a walk on a cold dip does in the morning. They said it's like taking cocaine without the side effects.
I love it. Yeah.
And this is what I say to people, that if your head is in the right place, problems become challenges. But if your head is not in the right place, challenges become problems. Because you can't process them. And I went through a period myself after leaving Quick Pick. I did an experiment. I wanted to know, 22 years full on, and I wanted to know what was it like to do nothing. I wouldn't recommend it.
I can't picture you.
I tried it, and out of boredom, once we had the houses set up for renting, there was no real work in that, and I started importing campers at him from Germany, and loved the travelling. And they were the days before Google Maps with the sat nav. But what I do at him, you do all the homework before you leave. I was flying to Frankfurt Hahn. You know the areas, because West Germany was divided into 13 group area, kind of like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you'll see which area that either we'll go to see that, we won't go to see it. But I didn't make a lot of money out of it, but it got my brain back, my brain went to sleep. But it also caught me at another traumatic part of my life. I would have been very close to James, or Seamus, the second oldest. Much closer to him now than I would be to Frank. And he died sudden in 2001. And because I wasn't dealing with the public, I withdrew from the public. And it made it worse, not better. Because the public helps you get on with it.
Pulls you through. Yeah.
It does. And because I'd moved away from the public, because we'd sold the business, and I just stayed out of the firing line, if you know what I mean. But it didn't work. Like somebody said to me recently, was I planning on retiring? And I said, retirement for self-employed people is called debt. But you need something to get you out of bed in the morning.
You do. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You need a reason to live. That's what I call it, you know. So,
Going back to your father and mother, the farm was their reason, you know.
oh yeah,
You know, and
it was survival.
it was survival, you know.
Oh, they had no choice, but to get out, they had no choice, you know. But that was life. That was life in a small farm.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that they were wonderful providers. Mm-hmm. Considering that my father never had a wage other than from farming, right?
And most people would have had an income off farm, or wouldn't?
They would have, because
Yeah.
they couldn't get by without it.
Yeah, yeah.
They just couldn't possibly get by without it. But like, I meet a fierce cross-section of people from all walks of life through the storage. And I do mean from homeless people to people that think they're special. I said think. But, so I've no problem saying to people how I describe my upbringing. I said we were poor, ignorant, and brainwashed by the church, because the church brainwashed the state. That was the way it was back in the 50s, whether you like it or not. And these things had more effect in the country. It was even more, you know, we were more backward, if you know what I mean. But when you're talking about like I said, growing up poor. And I remember one time I was sitting down over in Helen's in Kinmacalogue, and it was very busy the same night. Liz wasn't with me. And Helen said to me, would you mind if this person sits at the table? I said, no problem whatsoever. She was German. She was cycling around Ireland. She was a doctor. And I have no problem opening the conversation saying that I grew up poor. Well, she said, we're all poor. I said, what do your parents do? I looked at her. My child, I said, you don't know what poverty is. Do you know what I mean? I had the same conversation with a fella. He's a retired bank manager, and his father was a creamery manager down in Castletownbere. I said, you realise, I said, there was money came into your house every week of the year. Yeah. The type of farming that my parents were doing, they'd have been a number of months of the year. Nothing. Yeah. And that's where the self-sufficiency came in. Mm-hmm. I saw a certain amount of that in Belarus when I was there. Yeah. Yeah. But severe poverty in Belarus. Some would remind me when we went out the country, it reminded me of my upbringing. But severe poverty, you know. But like, you see, money is fierce and important when you don't have it. And in the height of the Celtic Tiger, when people used to say to me, "Asher, €1,000,000 nothing." So what I used to say to people was, at the time the examiner was €2. And I said, if you went into the paper shop with €1, you wouldn't get it. I said, that's only €1. And tell me $1,000,000 is nothing. Yeah. And short in the conversation, if somebody rang me, I'm sorry, I'm in a meeting. Which technically is correct. Mm-hmm. No, there has to be missed calls on my phone. I know there has to be. But we had to put it on silent because you're not going to go. That's another thing. The phone has taken over our lives.
Oh, it's demented.
And it's costing businesses a fortune.
Yeah. It's costing society.
I remember when my brothers were in Germany first, and you'd go into the pay phone. Mm-hmm. I never lumbered my parents with a phone when I was on the road. Yeah. And up to I moving in here, I had no phone. Okay? But people could contact you.
They'd find a way, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like people found a way.
Yeah, good point.
You know?
I had no phone when we moved into the schoolhouse above for the first couple of years.
And it wasn't the end of the world.
It wasn't, no, we got him grand.
I was in O'Connor's.
No landline.
No landline either. No.
I was in O'Connor's a couple of years ago, and these 5 or 7 guys, I call them guys in their kind of late 20s, obviously on the building, and I was having breakfast on a Friday morning, and I was just watching everyone.
Yeah.
And I left them work away for a while. I said, guys, could you just imagine life without it?
And they're, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We have selective amnesia. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why I made a lot of money out of bread in the 80s, there was a lot of families reared in bread and butter and bread and jam.
Yeah.
I could drop off 20 loaves of bread to a family for a week. Mm-hmm. That same house you wouldn't put one loaf into today.
Yeah.
And bread was subsidised. People don't realise that.
Okay, yeah. Subsidised at origin?
At base.
Yeah. Okay.
The government subsidised.
Yeah.
Every loaf of bread that was baked was subsidised.
All right, okay, I didn't know that, yeah.
You see? Yeah. But you see,
it was cheap food. Yeah.
It was cheap food. Mm-hmm. And what I'm saying to you is that the volume of bread that I was actually putting through the van was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But my way of making money was volume.
Yeah.
But see, it all changed then. Then when the subsidies went, and a lot of bakeries closed. But it made my run much more valuable, because this consortium of IAWS, they had a company called Irish Pride. Mm-hmm. And I had the agency in this area for Irish Pride.
Okay.
And that built out of a lot of bakeries closing. And I managed to get £25,000 for my bread round in '94.
That was quite a sum back then.
But I had good books.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, the same guy is still doing it.
Lahan.
No. Joe, I gave the shop round to Joe.
Okay.
Declan Lavers.
All right. Okay.
He bought
commercial.
Yeah. No, at that stage, the other thing was dying.
Yeah. It was the tail end.
Because it was, like,
small run. Yeah.
look, so like in January '95 when we opened Glengarriff Road, and I'll always remember a woman came in and she congratulated me on buying the corner shop. By the way, what year did you come here?
93.
93, okay. So you're part of my journey. So, and the next breath she said, you do know the day the corner shop is gone? I said, you're right. She said, what are you doing here, so? I said, we'll reinvent the wheel.
Very good. Yeah, and so you did.
And
because you transformed that place. Like I remember going in there before you. And
slightly different.
Yeah.
A tad.
Just
a tad.
Slightly different. Yeah.
And I was talking this morning to an artist, and I said, some things happen in your life, and we can't explain why, but there was a guy in the area at the time. I haven't seen or heard of him in years, but he painted 2 boards for us on the part of the shop looking up Newtown, 2 8x4s.
Okay.
No, he did a massive job on them, but I said never put an artist hanging up a painting. They can paint it, but the person put up is a very different trade. Yeah. But anyway, I got Pat McSweeney to fix them to the wall afterwards. But when we put those paintings on the wall, the business exploded.
What were the paintings? I'm trying to remember.
You see, you've long forgotten that now.
Yeah.
We had 2 paintings on the wall facing out Newtown.
Yeah.
And it just brought, there was a picture of eggs and cheese and kind of...
Okay, yeah.
But it brought...
Yeah.
And then we put lights on them.
Yeah.
And it just brought the building to life.
Yeah.
And what I used to always say to people when we were going really well, I'm not a shopkeeper. That's what I used to say to people.
Yeah.
I was fine while I was under pressure to survive. But once we got the thing going well, I said, year 3, we were on, okay, year 4 I was ripe, and year 5 I was overripe, and year 6 I was rotten. Okay. But I love the road. You could ask Liz, like, I'm a person of the road. Yeah. And being in the one place all the time, I found it very difficult.
All right. Yeah.
Out there, my godfather, I might have been maybe 8 or 9, and he gave me a 10-shilling note.
Okay. Wow.
Bottom left, right?
Yeah.
That's not it, that's one of them. Right. To me, that was the equivalent of winning the lottery.
Yeah.
And that's 62 cents.
Yeah. It's all relative, isn't
But
it?
yes, but that's the point. That's the point I'm making. I broke the other collarbone off a motorbike at Deasy's Bridge. 2 women thought they were dead.
You had to match them up.
They came down to pick me up dead off the road. But I got pneumonia. At 11. It was actually from furniture we were given. I didn't realise that I had such a serious allergy to wool. Okay. See, farming for me is out in many ways.
Yeah. Being allergic to wool would be...
Yeah. Jeez.
No, I know. This is serious. This is more serious than you think, because I spent 4 years, as I said, in university. Okay? That was with Con and Kitty and Glengarriff, or in Barrack Street. And I was forever in those 4 years with snot coming off my nose. And when I went at the bread, my health changed dramatically. Yeah. I never realised that I had such an allergy to the product I was selling.
Yeah. But sure, people didn't know much about allergies.
I know, but
we're poorly.
I know, but the point I'm making is that I enjoyed rude health once. So anybody ever asked me, I hate being around carpet. Now, I'm not going to lay those carpets. I have somebody doing it tomorrow. Yeah. But do you see carpet in the house here?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of carpet.
But you have to put a mat over it. This is the thing. When I hear that, but you have to put a mat over it. Yeah, and you know as well that there were 3 schools in the valley at one stage.
Yeah.
And Inchitlock was one of the very first schools after the Catholic emancipation.
Okay, it's there a long time, yeah.
You are aware
And
that,
there was the big old house there, wasn't there?
but you are aware that the school was upstairs and the stables were down.
Stables was downstairs, yeah.
Yeah, and my mother went there and my grandfather went there.
Yeah.
From that side because they were near Inchitlock.
All right, okay.
Yeah.
So, but they would have walked across the fields probably then.
Yeah, God no, they got the bus.
But you know, the road would have been such a long way around.
No road. Across the fields, of course.
Yeah.
There was a path. There was a path.
Yeah.
But like I was saying to you about the people in Drumclough, to go to Mass, they came down to the Mealagh, up through what was my grandfather's place, Seamus Oaks, up onto the road, up over the hill, down to Kealkill.
Yeah.
So, right. So they went over along the road, and do you know where there's a sharp in when you go west from the hall and you take a sharp right up the hill?
Yeah.
There's somebody living in there.
There is, yeah.
Well, there was a road going in there that went across Cronan's and up through Ards, my home place,
Yeah.
and up onto the road.
And it came across by Noel Burke's, did it? And
No,
by-
that came out at Ards, out
Okay.
the same crossing Ards.
Yeah. Okay.
But I'm just thinking the distance that they travelled.
To get to Mass, yeah.
I'm talking about even Mannings, or not, they were Scullies. John Manning married in there. The Scullies, the distance they travelled to get out of up onto the first road.
Yeah. And that would have been fields and tracks.
No, there was a track there.
Yeah.
There was a track there.
Yeah.
No, there was a road there.
Yeah.
But like it was a road for horse and cart.
It was a track rather than a road.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been.
And another story that I have there is that when the road was built to go across the valley, as we call it, the new line, and as I talked about this morning, when that road was tarred, and because there were a lot of horses going to the Creamery that time, men came along at night with picks and they dug up the tar in the middle of the road because they said the horses would be slipping in it.
Okay. Yeah.
Think about it.
To pull the cart and the horse would have its grip. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like the horse was,
Central.
the horse was fierce important.
Yeah.
You know, the horse was the engine.
Yeah.
Do you know, that's the reality, like.
You're
fab.
amazing, yeah.
On the back of the tree.
But you see, I'm, like I said, where I'm lucky is that I try not to look up or down to anyone. I'm like a rebel without a cause. And just because somebody gets a title, it doesn't mean that we have to.
Yeah.
I have great difficulty with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Queen now wouldn't work in my book at all, or the King. No.
Should get treated the same. You know, that's my attitude. As you
No.
say, don't look up or down to anyone.
No. Yeah, but like I said, but you're the same person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just always remember that. And that's why I have no problem telling stories of my youth. And
Absolutely.
because any story I've told there, I can go back and tell that again.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, that's what happened.